Good evening. I'd like to call our board meeting to order and ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker,
Present.
Mr. Brown.
I'm actually here tonight.
Yay.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Much improved, but still have a ways to go. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Vice President Cole.
Present.
Ms. Gibbs.
Present.
Ms. Hudson.
Here.
Ms. Reyes.
Here.
You have a quorum, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. And in honor of his triumphant return, I'd like to ask Board Member Brown to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please be upstanding.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, sir. All right, thank you very much. What I'd like to do is briefly read through the agenda, and I'm going to offer some changes. So we will have, what I'd like to actually ask is, if there's no objections from my colleagues, I'd like to move Resolution 4.1 up so we can do that prior to recessing into executive session. Also, if there's no objection, I'd like to move our public comment up to prior to our executive session so that those who are here to provide testimony this evening don't have to wait for our executive session before they can address the board. So, I beg your pardon, item 4.2 is the resolution we're moving up, not 4.1. So after we do our resolution, after we hear public comment, the board will then recess into executive session. We will return from executive session. We will have a few other special board recognitions. We will then hear our direct reports. We will then take up our consent agenda, after which we will have announcements and points of pride from board members. Then we will recess again into executive session. We will not return from that executive session. Having said that, is there a motion that we adopt the agenda as amended?
So moved.
We have a motion and we have a second. And I'll ask the treasurer to call the roll.
President Baker,
Yes.
Mr. Brown,
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So I'm going to ask Presidents Coniglio and Carson to come up to the podium, if you don't mind. I think they're here somewhere. And I'm going to call on Ms. Gibbs to offer a resolution.
Thank you, President Baker. We are very proud to offer this resolution in support of Education Support Professionals Day, which was November 17th. And this resolution reads as such. Whereas Education Support Professionals Day was first celebrated in 1987 after the National Education Association's Representative Assembly called for the creation of a way to honor contributions of school support staff. And whereas education support professionals are often the first people our children encounter on a daily basis, the people who drive the bus, the ones who help the students cross the street, those who provide students a nutritious meal, they greet our guests at the school, they keep our school buildings and grounds clean and safe, and help our students be healthy and successful. Whereas education support professionals are integral to the educational process and our spirit of success. And whereas educational support professionals work tirelessly to ensure our students are ready for success and serve our children and communities with care and professionalism. And whereas it takes a team of instructional assistants, school nurses, school social workers, school counselors, school psychologists, secretaries, bus drivers, food service workers, custodians, maintenance workers, groundskeepers, and many other dedicated district employees to support the work of our teachers and administration. And whereas educational support professionals are often the unsung heroes of public public education. So now, therefore, be it resolved that the Columbus City Schools Board of Education hereby recognizes November 14th, 2018 as Education Support Professionals Day. Presented November 20th, 2018.
Mr. Treasurer, would you call the roll?
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Absolutely, yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you. President Coniglio and President Carson, would you like to say a few words as we recognize and congratulate you?
On behalf of myself and the members I represent of OPSI, better known as CSCA, we thank you. We look forward to continue working with the board and the staff, but most importantly, I appreciate my brother standing here beside me. I know without the support of him and the members that he represents, my people could not be successful in the work that they do. So it's a team effort. It's not one group of individuals that work for the district. It takes all of us to continue to be successful in this, what I call the village. And anybody knows me, I'm a proud and firm believer that we toot our own horn, and I believe Columbus City Schools is an awesome district, and I appreciate the work that the members in the department that I represent do. Thank you.
Yes, on behalf of the members of the Columbus Education Association, I'd also like to say thank you.
Thank you very much, and I'd like to ask you both to join the board up front for a photograph, and let's give them a round of applause and all of our employees. That's it for now. Thank you again to Presidents Carson and Coniglio for being here, and to all of the members that they represent who are getting it done for our kids every single day. We appreciate it. Let's move on then to public comment. So we do have 10 individuals signed up to speak this evening. We appreciate you all being here. And right before we begin public comment, I'd like to just make a brief statement. The engagement and constant flow of communication with our families and community stakeholders are important to this Board of Education and to the success of our district as a whole. Looking ahead at tonight's public comment, I could see that there were many differing views and opinions on the future of Columbus North International High School, Dominion Middle School, and our language immersion schools. If I could briefly set the stage before some of those public comments are shared, I think we might alleviate some of the concerns and consternation that have brewed over the past 2 weeks since the board voted on the recommendations of the Facilities Task Force. First, I need to repeat my appreciation for the dedicated work of the volunteer members of the task force. Their time and efforts were not in vain, just the opposite. It's because of the thoughtful work of the task force and the internal facilities team that this board voted to move forward with 6 of the 8 recommendations. 4 of those recommendations are being advanced directly as recommended by the task force. There are 2 others that my colleagues and I want some additional information and study on before any major decisions are made. That includes the proposals around the North High School building. The board has directed the interim superintendent to conduct further analysis of the idea. I appreciate that the administration is working on a process to gather data and research best practices, especially around language immersion and STEAM programs. And the interim superintendent has shared with me his commitment to making sure that the voices of families, students, school staff, and community members will be included in the process. Throughout the facilities task force process, we have benefited most when families become engaged, and I hope that the same level of engagement continues. If I may be a bit more reflective for a moment, anytime we implement the facilities task force process, we do start at a disadvantage. The mission of the task force is always centered on existing buildings and a debate on which ones might be closed. But I believe we are now at a point in our district where we simply can't close our way to better use of buildings, nor can we rely on school mergers to do more than simply fill up space. The facility needs of our district demand a much larger conversation that must include advancing our greater facilities master plan, and more importantly, a way to pay for it. But quite frankly, this is not the time for it. We need everyone in the district, including our incoming new superintendent, to be laser focused on academics and the very real threat at the State House by those at the State House who would rather see our schools run by a state-appointed manager with the authority to ignore our teachers, our skilled staff, and the voices of our community. There is a true sense of urgency, one that should not be disrupted by major upheavals of students, their schools, or programming. It's true our minds must always be on the future, but our eyes must stay focused on the challenges immediately ahead of us. Know that the conversations about our facilities are far from complete. If you do wish to share additional feedback, I want to encourage you to share it directly with the customer relations team, either through their helpline or by email. You can find information on the website on how to do that. Your voice is important. As you know, the board directed the administration to continue to study the various components of those recommendations and report back to the board as it relates to recommendation number 3. The board does not plan to take any additional action on the recommendations at the meeting tonight, and likely will not do so until the administration provides additional information in response to the resolution adopted at the last board meeting. As the administration designs a process to complete additional study on recommendation number 3, you may rest assured that there will be opportunity for additional stakeholder input. I look forward to your continued engagement. Thank you. Now let's move right into our speakers.
Mr. President.
Board Member Hudson?
I would hope that we would have time for board comment as well. I mean, I appreciate the personal statement, but I think there's a need for board discussion about next steps and, process. What happened at the last meeting was, given all the work that went into that task force effort, and I was involved, I tried to make the best of it, but was highly inappropriate. And I think disrespectful to the task force and the community folks that participated, as well as our staff and administration. And I guess I think, I want to hear from everybody who's here tonight and hear what they have to say. I think the board and board members have injected unnecessarily emotion before fact. And we have a lot of students in need in a lot of buildings, and I know there are feelings and hard feelings about various issues, but the board has reflected, I think, emotions and identified priorities, and you've labeled priorities academics over this, but it's, what, we have to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. And the thought of disruption, we made that decision was made and those statements were made, when we did this at our last meeting, without any analysis from administration that this would be disruptive to academics. That was a view of board members, but it isn't a view that I share without recommendation from, our folks on the ground and our administration. So I guess I would say I respect your statement, but I want to reflect that was your statement. It is not mine. And I would ask again, as I did at our last meeting, that we have time to go through each and every one of those recommendations and evaluate them separately. Because we owe it to everyone who's involved in that process, everyone from our team and everyone that we asked to be involved in that. Thank you.
Board Member Hudson, thank you. And I do know that as the administration works to put together the plan by which we will proceed, there will be opportunity, surely, for that discussion.
Well, and I think, President Baker, we have to
Board
provide
Member
them.
Hudson?
We need to provide them with guidance because we basically just said we need a study. And you know, studies are where things get lost. And that's what they do at the legislature when they want to punt but don't want to say no. And so we need to provide guidance. And I had offered amendment to say it should be immediate or something like that. We would do it in soon. And I would say we need to have that discussion as a board so that our administration has that guidance that it is soon. Because it is clear that, because we were supposed to make that decisions, not punt, at this meeting because of budget budget needs and budget decision-making. And we punted. And now we have put everyone behind the 8 ball and we've moved it down, we have moved it, kicked the can down the road at, another year. And that's not okay for a lot of families, and we're seeing that, and we see it again with all these folks that have taken time to come, and like 2 days before Thanksgiving, there are a lot of folks here, I'm sure, that really would prefer to be at the grocery store right now. And that is not, we need to be respectful of that. So we need to provide guidance. That's why I think we as a board need to go through each of those recommendations and then talk through what's it going to take to get to that study finished.
Thank you, Board Member Hudson. And as we look to move forward into testimony, I saw Mr. Brown's hand up. If he'd like to offer a few brief comments.
Yes, thank you. I had the very frustrating and unhappy experience to watch this online, watch the last board meeting online. And as some of you know, I made repeated, very frustrating efforts to text into the meeting some thoughts. And because we're in the basement, many of those didn't get through. But, I'm not a legitimate participant in the board meeting if I'm not present. I don't know if I was in the rehab facility or where, but I was very unhappy, very disappointed, sad, and even embarrassed for this board by the action taken at the last board meeting. The board was wrong to rush and avoid full discussion of each of the recommendations that had been presented at that meeting, had been presented for the very first time to this board. Most of the recommendations had no conversation, no discussion whatsoever. None by the board before the board took action. There was no consideration given. The task force report was disrespected. The task force was disrespected. In my view, this board was irresponsible in its responsibilities to make decisions that are in the best interest of the district, and to instead allow a task force to work through most of the year, a large number of people, lots of hours, lots of staff time. And despite all of those efforts, the board just cut it off prematurely. You're right, Mary Jo, that this wasn't supposed to be addressed until tonight. Part of that I had requested, look, can it be done on the 20th? I believe I'm going to be healthy enough to get back here and participate. I wanted to do that. That made it even more frustrating for me. I think that the recommendations that were made with a lot of thought, a lot of care, a lot of work, and they should have been fully discussed, fully deliberated, and allow this board to have conversations about those things. At this point, unfortunately, I think we do, and I agree fully with my colleague, Ms. Hudson, we need to get at what are the next steps now. We can't simply undo last meeting's efforts. We've got to figure out what do we do now going forward. We need to quickly, very quickly, identify those next steps with specificity, and we need to address those next steps that we identify promptly. In my view, there are two areas that are probably more urgent than the others. One is I'm just amazed and disappointed that we do not have a plan for cause. Nothing except that, again, Ms. Hudson did suggest, and something was included briefly in the resolution that was passed, to study that. To me, that's not acceptable. The situation calls for action sooner. The other pressing area is recommendation 3. That's why we've got so many folks here who want to address the board and others that are supporting their friends and neighbors in doing that. But recommendation 3 pertaining to what's going to be with North High School, Dominion Middle School, and the 2 language immersion programs has to be addressed very quickly. I thought that based on reading the report of the task force, that recommendation 3 made a lot of sense. But I was reserving judgment because I wanted to have the conversation here and get more input from the administration. I guess we'll now have the opportunity to do that. I hope that the language in the resolution about ending, terminating all further work on this doesn't mean what it says, because we need to address these things and do so quickly. And I'll probably have some more thoughts. I'm angry about this, and I think we need to work at it. But thank you for the time.
Mr. Brown, colleagues, in the interest of time, I would ask that we limit our comments.
And I too want to hear from all of our folks that here want to speak.
Yeah, so let's keep our comments brief and then move into our public testimony when we can. Board Member Gibbs?
President Baker, I think that what we asked for was an opportunity for the administration to study, and I hear my colleagues asking for more time to discuss, but right now is not our time. This is the time that is set aside for the community to come and speak to us. And so there are 10 people waiting to speak. And so if my colleagues can hold all of their comments, I think we should give our guests their time to come and speak to us, and then we can calendar time to have a work session to talk about what is left to talk about these recommendations. The recommendation, again, for 3 was not voted down. If you read it correctly, we asked for more information to study. But there are people here who do want to go grocery shop, including me. So if I would ask that we turn and what we owe is the time that these people have asked to come down here to speak to us, and I think we give them their due.
President Baker spoke for all of us.
Board Member
and
Hudson?
It's our prerogative to also speak for ourselves.
I'm okay.
Yeah, so, well, don't lecture us about it then.
Board Member Hudson, you are out of order.
Thank you.
Thank you. Let's move on then to hear from our speakers. So speaker number 1, so I'll say, when I call your name, come to the podium. You'll have 4 minutes to address the board. I'll read the topic of your comments, and I'll read the board action requested from you. You'll see a timer on the board behind me, so just please plan to conclude when you get to 4 minutes, just so that we can hear from everyone. I appreciate your patience. First speaker is Kyle Destry. Topic, building conditions at Columbus Alternative High School. Board action requested, reconsider alternative accommodations for cause. Please approach the podium if you are here. Mr. Destry. Is anyone in the hallway? Could he be out in the hallway or in the overflow room? So our next speaker, be prepared just in case Mr. Destry is not with us. Next speaker, Karen Staley. Topic, Columbus Alternative High School. Board action requested. Authorize an external facilities audit of our high school for health and safety reasons. Ms. Staley, good evening.
I can speak into this. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, and members of the board, Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Sorry, this is really high. I am a parent of 2 students in Columbus City Schools, one of which is at Columbus Alternative High School. I've been in the district for 11 years. Well, I've been a parent in the district for 11 years and a Columbus City Schools supporter since I've lived in the district for 24 years. The concerns presented to you regarding the cause facility at the last board meeting are not new, and this is just one of many times that families and students have stepped forward over the years to propose plans and request changes to this school building. As the years go by, the building continues to deteriorate and deferred maintenance continues to grow. Operating in this manner creates health and safety risks and is just unacceptable. Tonight, there are a few health and safety concerns I would like to address. The first is the state of the electrical systems at cause. On a regular basis, this building experiences power outages. While most are brief, periodically there are more extensive ones, which have resulted in a need to cancel and reschedule activities, such as open house, student meetings, parent meetings. The state of the current electrical system creates obstacles to learning, impacts scheduling and activities, and limits the ability to use some electrically powered equipment and technology. A number of power outlets in the building are hazardous or not in working order. My student was shocked last week when he tried to plug in a cord in the auditorium. Another student in a different classroom attempted to plug in a cord to a power outlet, and the outlet blew out. A few weeks ago, a teacher had planned an experiment requiring the room's power outlets and discovered none of them were working and could not conduct the experiment. During last month's PSAT test, a teacher noted that the lights flickered the entire time. Testing is already stressful enough. Electrical shorts, power outages, and electrical outlet problems are not something to take lightly, and I am concerned about whether this building might have a fire risk. The second concern is the heating system, which produces excessive heat in many areas throughout the building. Certain classrooms, the band and choir rooms, and the auditorium and stage area, which typically has a temperature in the 90s, are all impacted. The drama teacher has had to move his classroom from the stage area to another space because students with asthma are unable to deal with the heat. During one of last year's chorale concerts, 2 students fainted. The light booth was running at an average of 103 degrees when the students were preparing for the recent play. Keep in mind that these are the temperatures when it is cool or cold outside. Just today, I noticed the office windows were open when I picked up my son from school. It was 36 degrees outside. That tells me something. At the same time these areas are hot, other areas of the building experience extra cold temperatures. And just since the last board meeting, we had a day that the heat was not working in most of the building, and there were rooms that were less than 60 degrees. The third concern is the recent transformer incident, in which, due to flooding, a transformer located underground just outside of the auditorium doors blew. The 3 transformers located in a vault underground, and the lines were replaced by the Columbus City Power. But the replacement will not prevent this from happening again. The city has indicated they are working with the district on an alternative location for an above-ground transformer. However, this will require time, planning, and perhaps financial considerations. The incident also caused a three-phase fan to overheat in the cause basement. The smoke from the fan resulted in building evacuation and the fire department reporting to the school. Everyone was safe, thankfully. A multitude of other concerns exist, including the safety issues of where guests enter the building, the poor lighting in our parking lots, the teacher parking lot, which will be an ice hazard come winter, and the ongoing issues with insects and rodents. I am asking you today that the board act now and authorize a facilities audit of the cause building to be conducted by a third party. The audit should include assessing the electrical and heating systems from a health and safety perspective, as well as looking at other areas of potential risk, such as ventilation, air and water quality, materials, structural, and vermin issues. The audit must include a what-if plan, considering immediate fixes with temporary occupancy if needed, a short-term move, a long-term build. Waiting is just no longer an option. Over the years, extensive funds have been expended on other schools. Funds have been expended on consultants, new programs, and partnerships. Funds will continue to be expended to operate buildings that are 25 to 50% empty, buildings that are updated and have working science labs. All the while, students in many of Columbus City schools work harder to learn in facilities past their useful lives. As you think about the resolution passed at the last board meeting and reconsider parts of your decision, I ask you revisit the comments and feedback of cause. I ask you think about what the plan would be if any of our schools needed a temporary space. We cannot continue with the status quo. It is time for our district, our board, and our city to show pride in cause. It is time that the words become actions. It is time to show cause students and faculty that they too are valued. Find a way. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Staley. Are there any clarifying questions from board members? Thank you very much for coming
Apologies
down
for
this
going
evening.
over.
Thank you very much. Our next speaker is Mr. Rodney Kent. Topic, moving forward, board action requested, know the boundaries and feeder information reform as it relates to Linda McKinley and Mifflin High School. Mr. Kent, good evening.
Well, first of all, I would like to say happy holidays and thank you for your vote and decision at your last meeting. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bajorek, Interim Superintendent Smith, members of the board, and Dr. Stafford. Ladies and gentlemen, your decision comes to the community with great applause as we enter into this holiday season. The investments that are being made into the Linda McKinley under the City of Columbus's One Linden plan are going to be monumental. We truly believe that the harvest from this process will create a bounty for which all will be able to take advantage of, the children, the businesses, and they will move forward. And the concerned clergy that came to you and spoke to you and showed you what can happen when there is a degree of unity involved. And I say unity in a positive manner because they came forward to speak to you. And they have a very distinct concept of what can take place in that community as we move forward. We talked about what happens in Reynoldsburg and Dublin, where they have campus environments. We talked about the Linmore property, which I hope you dearly hold on to. It's a very powerful, very important piece of property in that community. Prior to it closing, if you think about it, it was the only real dedicated junior high school within that boundary concept. I ask that you revisit some of the 1960 formatted boundaries. In doing so, you will assist not only Mifflin, but you will assist Linda McKinley STEM Academy create a feeder system that will allow that process to sustain itself. It will allow educational concepts as reported by the Linda McKinley STEM Academy staff that everything is rising, GPAs, APs, partnerships. This will continue. But we can only do it with your help and understanding. And so we are hoping, the concerned clergy and members of the community are hoping that you take this information that we have come to you with and look to build a format that will mirror what is taking place in school systems around us. Campus formats, allowing the communities to keep their children together. STEM Academy Elementaries, STEM Academy Junior Highs, STEM Academy High Schools. When you do that, you can take and introduce Algebra 1, Algebra 2, Geometry, and take it right on up to scale as it reaches the high school level. With this concept of thought, we will see GPAs continue to rise. Although you are faced with many things to deal with here, you have heard the voices of a community that has come to you and spoken to you and say, we want to be a partner in the process. And if we have someone from CEA or other areas of education come in and consult with us, we will come back with resolution formats that when you sit down as a group and talk about what you expect and what you want to do, these processes will be in place, they will be sustaining and long-going. Ladies and gentlemen of this board, as I say before, as I have addressed you in closing, our children are the seeds to the future. Your love will warm them. Your praise will shower them. And education will make them grow. Ladies and gentlemen of the board, thank you for your time. Thank you for allowing me to address you. And please continue to listen to the people in the communities around you that have legitimate concerns for their children and their education, for which is extremely important. Thank you, and may you all have a blessed holiday season.
Thank you, Mr. Kent. Thank you very much for coming down this evening. Colleagues, any clarifying questions for Mr. Kent? Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving. Our next speaker, Amanda McClafferty, topic, inadequate facilities at Dominion Middle School and possible move to Columbus North International. Board action requested, evaluate inadequate facilities at Dominion Middle School and a potential move to Columbus North International High School. Good evening.
Good evening. Good evening. Feedback. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Baharik, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. As you said, my name's Amanda McClafferty, and I'm the parent of a 7th grader at Dominion Middle School and a 2nd grader at École Kenwood French Immersion. I'm here this evening to ask you to quickly evaluate and approve the Facilities Task Force Recommendation 3, which joins Dominion Middle School with the middle school grades of the Immersion and Mastery programs at the former North High School building on Arcadia. My interests, of course, are twofold. I have a middle schooler who's facing an overcrowded building, and an elementary school student at the immersion programs who's facing the unknown when it comes to middle school. I have to say, when I first saw this plan, I was so excited. As you know from reviewing the task force information, Dominion Middle School is facing an unusual problem. There's too many students to fit in the current building. In a way, it's a good problem to have. It means groups like Clintonville Go Public has successfully campaigned for Clintonville families to stay in their neighborhood schools instead of leaving the district. It means neighborhood groups dedicated to reviving areas such as Linden and Wineland Park are doing a good job of building community and supporting families. Our city and district are seeing growth in communities and choosing public education, and that's something to be excited about. The downside of this growth is, of course, overcrowding. Dominion Middle School is currently at 130% occupancy and has turned away 48 students because of lack of space. This is discouraging because these were families that should be part of this wonderfully diverse and inclusive community. The current Dominion population is adapting to circumstances that are direct results from the overcrowding issue. For example, my 7th grader has 36 kids in her class, every class, 36 kids every day. There are other teachers with larger classes. She actually has the smallest class for her group. There aren't enough actual classrooms in the building to hire more teachers to teach the kids. Staff already share classrooms and have to get creative with learning spaces. This isn't an art on the cart situation. This is an orchestra has to meet in the cafeteria, and if anybody else joins, we might have to move out to the parking lot. The classrooms lack space for enough desks for all of the students. Last year in my daughter's math class, kids sat on the heaters in the back of the room because they physically couldn't add more desks to the room. She said it was okay because the heaters don't normally work anyways. But to be clear, they had desks, they just didn't have enough space. I'm hoping that a move to Arcadia can address this situation, and it would also aid in the populations that feed into Dominion, which are not just Clintonville schools. They include Salem Elementary, Hubbard, Mastery, which is the Victorian Village area, Como Elementary, and Clinton, Coleraine, and Indian Springs as well. Dominion is a beautiful representation of North Columbus and the diversity that it includes. I think it would be a great addition to add the immersion programs to this. A move to North and including the immersion middle school programs, as recommended by the task force, would give Dominion kids greater access to language education. The current Dominion curriculum limits students to Spanish language learning only. This would allow students to add French and possibly Mandarin, adding a depth of curriculum and language exposure for students, more students than ever. As a parent of children at the immersion program, I can speak from experience that language exposure can be life-changing. Language gives students a greater ability to understand and explore the world. Diversity and understanding of language and culture only benefit the student. It also helps mold the school community. At a time when we're looking at approving the seal of biliteracy, why not give more kids the chance to earn that seal of biliteracy by putting these programs together? Finally, a combined Dominion Immersion Middle School plan would give students at the immersion programs the opportunity to have a true middle school experience. I can say with certainty that families at ACOL Kenwood are eager to join a strong middle school program full of experiences that all middle schoolers have, like drama and soccer and engineering and maybe an occasional school dance. Currently, families in the immersion K-6 programs are faced with a difficult decision when it comes to middle school. Students who leave after 5th grade to attend a traditional grade band configuration for middle school feel a sense of incompletion when they leave their school family. Those students who stay through 6th grade are faced with limited, faced with limited options for middle school. Kenwood families are looking for the community that they had at Kenwood when they go to middle school and the diversity of curriculum that only a larger middle school can offer. I hope that you will consider a quick path for this recommendation to give both our immersion kids and our Dominion kids a great blend at Arcadia on North.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Clarifying questions, colleagues? Thank you very much for addressing the board this evening. Our next speaker, and please forgive me, Fayeleen Durenencourt. Topic: support the immersion language schools and Dominion Middle School move to Columbus North International High School. Board action requested. Support the proposal of merging the foreign language immersions into Columbus North International High School. Good evening.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you for allowing me to speak this evening. As you said, my name is Fayeleen Durenencourt. I am a parent of a 1st grader and a 4th grader at ACOL Kenwood Elementary School. I am here to express my strong support for the facilities task relocation proposal to create an embedded language immersion program at Dominion Middle School starting in 2020-21 academic year. This is a great idea, one that I strongly support. My children's experience with immersion education within Columbus City School has been very positive. École Kenwood is the only public French immersion school in Ohio, and it is doing great things. At École Kenwood, my children receive excellent education and language acquisition and solid academics. They are able to acquire a second language, which gives them the ability to function in a diverse society. I also appreciate the inclusivity that École Kenwood offers as a lottery, school, and that all city kids are eligible to attend. The children are exposed to many different cultures and activities. My first grader had the opportunity to hear and see the Columbus Symphony Orchestra perform. They provided early exposure to classical music, and my fourth grader went to Camp Wilson to learn about nature, habitats, and survival skills. Furthermore, École Kenwood has many activities that help students become well-rounded, such as international potluck, which includes food and a display of many Francophone countries, Local Matters, a company that teaches the student how to eat healthy and create healthy eating habits. Also, Momentum fostered learning about history through dance movement. Relocating Dominion Middle School to a building with greater capacity will allow the creation of a bilingual middle school curriculum for the district's immersion families. This is a win-win proposition for both the immersion and Dominion communities. All of you are aware that Dominion Middle School is a designated STEAM school, which means extra emphasis is placed on science, technology, engineering, arts, and math. It would be great for more CCS middle schoolers to have access to advanced science, arts, and languages. By creating a genuine middle school that is inclusive for grades 6 through 8th graders district-wide. It would provide an age-appropriate and demanding learning experience. This will be a dream come true for me, to see my children continue to learn French and a diverse middle school with sound academics. My desire is to see the continuation of the immersion programs in the middle school. These middle schoolers will be able to continue to do exceptional activities while receiving excellent education in a diverse environment. In addition, the immersion programs in the middle school will prepare these children for their future and becoming valuable assets to our society. As a proud CCS parent, I look forward to partnering with the district and with the École Kenwood excellent staff to extend our innovative dual language curriculum through the middle school years and beyond. Thank you.
Thank you. Any clarifying questions, colleagues? A clarifying question, Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being here, all of you. I guess my question is relative to the traditional grade band versus a K through 8. Is there greater interest? There seems to be greater interest, just for point of clarification, there seems to be greater interest in a K through 6 and then the traditional grade band versus a K through 8?
Yes, the reason being, if you have a middle school that you are able to offer sports and other activities, extracurricular that you're able to offer to those students, you cannot offer it at elementary level. Because if you start from 6, 7, and 8, they have the opportunity to have their own team and do other extracurricular. So it is very important at the same time getting the language piece, which is missing just about every middle school. They don't get that advanced language. And that's why, as a parent, I'm here to speak today. And I'm hoping everybody, every member of the board will take consideration and make a quick resolution to this matter. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other clarifying questions? Okay. Thank you very much for addressing the board this evening. Our next speaker, Vladimir Kogan. Professor Kogan, welcome to the podium. Good evening.
Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohorik, Internal Auditor Smith, distinguished members of the board, and Superintendent Dr. Stanford. And first, let me thank you for your service on behalf of taxpayers, families, and children of Columbus. As the President mentioned, my name is Vlad Kogan. I'm an associate professor at The Ohio State University, where I teach and do research on education policy. But today I'm speaking to you as a resident of Columbus and a parent of 2 children who attend Columbus City Schools. I brought a few visual aids, so if you can indulge me. I'm here also to discuss the overcrowding issue at Dominion Middle School, where, as you heard, enrollments exceed the capacity. Earlier this month, the board adopted a resolution instructing that, quote, no action be taken, unquote, on the unanimous recommendation from the staff and the facilities task force to move the school to a larger building. Perhaps this is not what the board meant, but I think many parents took no action to mean no action, and some of them decided to take action themselves. My understanding is that a small group of Clintonville parents have begun circulating petitions urging you to address the capacity issues. And one of the solutions they suggest is reducing the number of elementary schools included in a Dominion feeder pattern. My goal tonight is to make clear to you and the community the devastating consequences of doing so. So the DMS pattern represents in many ways the very best and very worst aspects of public education in Columbus. When I say the worst, I'm referring to the stark racial and economic segregation in elementary schools. Columbus is one of the most segregated cities in America, and the segregation is reproduced in our elementary attendance boundaries. And nowhere is the segregation more evident than in the elementary schools that make up the DMS feeder pattern. Compare Clinton Elementary, where Black and Latino students collectively account for less than 15% of the enrollment, and where nearly 80% of the students are white, to Wineland Park Elementary, where Black students account for nearly 80% of those enrolled. Or compare Indian Springs Elementary, where a third of the students qualify for free reduced lunch, to Como Elementary, where nearly 3/4 of all students qualified. As you can see in these charts, in the last chart in particular, the consequence of such racial and economic segregation drives much of the disparity in student achievement across these schools. Fortunately, Dominion itself is the model of what public education in Columbus could and should be. It is a campus where students from these segregated elementary schools come together, creating a student body that exposes kids from Clintonville to the diversity that awaits them in the world. And it provides a higher achieving peer mix for children from the other neighborhoods, an important determinant of their future academic growth. Dominion also delivers an outstanding education. Indeed, if we focus on value added or annual student achievement growth, Dominion is one of the best middle schools in Columbus, posting larger than average gains year after year, and not just overall, but especially amongst the district's lowest achieving students. However, this model is at risk. If the petition organizers get their way, and schools like Como, Salem, and Wineland Park are reassigned from the pathway, the economically disadvantaged students of color who attend these elementary schools will suffer. Perhaps more importantly, our district will take a step backward, reproducing rather than lessening the inequality reflected in our community's housing patterns. I hope that you agree that we should not and cannot institutionalize segregation through our school attendance boundaries in this way. I have no doubt that these parents have only good intentions, and I agree with them that the overcrowding in Dominion needs to be urgently addressed. I know that you have no action item on this issue today, but I hope, and I think many members in the community gathered here today expect, that each of you goes on the record to state unequivocally that you will accept no solution that further increases racial and economic inequality and segregation in our school system. Thank you.
Are there... I'll ask, just in the interest of time, I'll ask everyone to hold their applause. I know that's an unpopular request. Claire, thank you, Professor. And I should say, because you came up so quickly, I didn't get to say your topic, which is Dominion Middle School proposed recommendations to move to Columbus North. Board action requested to be provided information on the composition of the elementary schools that feed into Dominion. So are there clarifying questions at this point for Professor Kogan? Yes, I believe Mr. Brown, your hand was up first.
Thank you. I appreciate the amount of time and thought that you've given to this, obviously, as well as bringing a professional perspective to some of the information. I guess my question is, and I don't think I missed it, but you don't have any particular recommendation with respect to the problems that are requiring solutions.
I certainly do not have any recommendations. I think my wife, who's speaking next, may have some of her own, but I think I know all the options have trade-offs, and I think I'll leave it up to the board, but I only ask you to make preventing segregation the #1 criteria for whatever options you consider.
Well, it's certainly a very important criteria. So thank you.
Can As a point of clarification, and I've spoke with many community members, no part of the facility task force recommendations included changing any of the elementary school boundaries. And no petitions have come to the board, none that I would entertain, that would move an elementary school from the Dominion boundaries. So I've heard it, and I heard it kind of buzzing through the community, but that recommendation was not made either by the task force nor any member of the board. So that is clearly just something that's growing amongst a few, but it was not put forth, and nor have they advanced that idea. So I just want to just share that with everyone, that no one has recommended moving any of the elementary feeder schools from the Dominion pathway.
Absolutely, and I just want to say that I think the reaction from the community and the few members, as you pointed out, very few members, I think is in some ways a reaction to the board's unwillingness to address this issue in a timely manner. And so I think unless this issue is addressed, you're going to have proposals like this probably come before you. And so I think addressing it sooner than later is important to avoid these kinds of issues arising.
In the interest of time, I want to make sure we get through all of these speakers, but I want to ask you a question about this at the end.
Sure.
Thank you very much for addressing the board. Our next speaker is Laura Kogan, and so topic is Dominion Middle School proposed recommendation to move to Columbus North International High School, and board action requested. Discuss the future plans of Dominion Middle School. Good evening.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Laura Kogan, and I wanted to start off by saying thank you. I imagine this can sometimes feel like a rather thankless position, but please know I do recognize your hard work. I am a resident of Wineland Park. I have a kindergartner at Wineland Park Elementary and a sixth grader at Dominion. I serve as chair of festival planning for our Wineland Park Civic Association and sit on the board of Clintonville Go Public. I know you voted against relocating Dominion Middle School to the North International Building, and I strongly urge you to reconsider that decision. But first, I would like to take some time to talk about good things that are happening at Wineland Park Elementary, one of the schools in the Dominion feeder pattern. Last year, our parents started a 501c3 PTO. Also, one of our teachers won the coveted Milken Educator Award a few years ago, and 2 fourth grade teachers continue to post impressive student achievement growth, placing them among the top 20% in the state. Not the district, not the county, but the entire state. I do not have enough time to list the other incredible accomplishments of each staff member, but know that everyone brings positive attributes to our school. The strategic hiring of a strong staff by our former principal, coupled with strong academic implementation and leadership by our new principal, has enabled Wineland Park Elementary this year to finally shed our status as a priority school. Thank you. The current Pathway schools have developed strong ties with one another. This year, I chaired the Dominion Harvest Party, a trick-or-treat night hosted at Dominion for the feeder elementary schools. Additionally, the Clinton Elementary PTA provided financial support and administrative support to help get the Wineland Park PTO up and running. They have also organized school supply drives and a box top drive for us. Additionally, we have been the beneficiaries of grants and fundraisers from Clintonville Go Public. That is why it was both shocking and saddening to me when I caught wind of the fact that some parents from Clintonville lauded your decision to not move Dominion. Emboldened by the board's inaction, someone began shopping around a petition to request the board now tackle the capacity issue. Even if it was not explicitly stated in the petition, we know the end game would be to break up the feeder pattern, because if Dominion stays put, that would be the only solution to address the overcrowding issue. But I want it to be known to the school board that I do not believe this is what the majority of us or Clintonville parents want. Part of the job of the Facilities Task Force was to engage the community to get a sense of where stakeholders and parents stood on this issue. If the task force unanimously recommended Dominion moving to a larger building, don't you think this is reflective of the community's desires? I also want to let the board know that there are a lot of community stakeholders, parents, and residents, both in Wineland Park and other affected neighborhoods, that are starting to mobilize around this issue. Even the Clinton Elementary PTA has officially come out in support of moving Dominion to prevent breaking up the feeder pattern. To highlight this point, I ask that those present today who want to keep these schools together, please show your support by standing. I know it was mentioned in the last meeting that the priority was to focus on the F district rating to justify nixing the Dominion move. But I am confused as to why those things are mutually exclusive. Dominion consistently posts high value added, especially among the lowest achievers, so why would you want to hoard that? Wouldn't it be better to expand rather than restrict access to the school, especially among our most vulnerable student population? In summation, I request that you move ahead with the proposal or put forth an alternative plan to address the overcrowding issue without breaking up the feeder pattern while soliciting community feedback, and please do so in a timely manner.
Any clarifying questions? I do just want to offer one thing. You indicated that the board voted against or voted down recommendation 3, and we didn't. We voted to pursue further study. So
Thank
just
you
so
for the
everybody's clear on
clarification.
that, yes. Board Member Reyes?
So, thank you for coming. And I feel like I have to say something. So I attended a lot of the meetings that the task force put forth. I am active in some of the schools that were recommended to be moved, and I've had the opportunity to talk to some of the parents that do not feel that they're brave enough to come and speak publicly, parents that feel that they don't understand the process of being able, it's not a cultural thing, from some of our immersion programs. Some of our parents that have expressed that they would like to see something from an elementary school level and feel that the only option may be what was presented by the committee. And they've reached out, just as you all have reached out to say that please also listen to us. Please make sure that I too have a voice, though I may feel to, I guess to what you're saying, they feel like they're in the, I have no voice, it's already set because these stronger voices are being heard. So help us understand how we ensure that we're not only listening to you, because we are, because I felt that I needed to also hear them, and they had the opportunity to attend some of the open sessions. And I've visited the schools to hear from them because they're working 2 and 3 jobs. So sometimes they don't have the opportunity to come to the 5 o'clock or 6 o'clock sessions. Could you, or do you have a way that you have worked within your community, because obviously it sounds like you're engaged, to ensure that as many people's voices are heard, that make sure that we know how to do that? Have you any suggestions for us to know how to ensure that not only the strongest voices are heard?
Well, first of all, I'd like to say that I think coming from Wineland Park, I know that our families and our parents feel the same way, exactly what you're saying. Historically, Wineland Park has not been very mobilized, and we've also had, parents and families who struggle as well and work, many jobs and just do not have the time or maybe the ability to get themselves educated on these issues. And so I think that the best way to do that is to empower them. And that's part of the reason why we worked really hard to start a PTO at Wineland Park Elementary. I think that that's been, one avenue to help empower all of our families. So that would, be my first suggestion, would maybe to be start there, and then just continue, talking to them and empowering them to get them to speak for themselves.
Thank you. And as we move forward in getting more clarity on some of the I will tell you I have about 250 to about 1,000 questions about the whole moves, because I need to hear from the Columbus North International parents too. I've been engaged with that school. Do they want to move somewhere else? What does immersion mean? What does bilingual versus immersion mean if you merge schools together? Now I've lost my thought. So would you all be, or you in particular, be able, since you've already done some mobilization, help us in being able to reach some of those parents that may need to get a little bit of help having a voice?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Fine questions, Mr. Vice President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you so much for being here with us this evening. I am a Columbus North International student parent. I have been and my biggest question is around fidelity. Was there any conversation between the community and the administration about the question of fidelity, particularly to our immersion programs? Well, she's in front of us. So I wanted to ask, has there been, I'm just asking. It is a question.
I'm sorry,
It is a
I'm
question.
not following. Can you
Has there
clarify?
been any conversation between this community of folks who are in front of us and the administration, not only about the facility, the population transition of students, but also the fidelity of programming, particularly to our immersion schools? Has there been discussion about that at all? Have you been privy to that?
I'm so sorry. I am so lost. I don't even understand what you're asking me right now.
That's not a question for
If you can maybe clarify a little bit more, I'm just not, or,
I thank you.
okay,
Okay.
thank you.
Any other clarifying questions for Ms. Cogan? Thank you very much for taking the time to be with us this evening. And we have our next speaker, and thank you for the visual aids, and thank you for involving that young man in your presentation. Lauren Squires is our next speaker, and she is here on the topic of Facilities Task Force recommendations, and she's requesting that we give reconsideration to the recommendation to move Dominion Middle School to Columbus North International High School. Ms. Squires, good evening.
Hi. Thank you. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bahorek, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. My name is Lauren Squires. I live in the University District, and I am the parent of a preschool-aged child. I also serve on the University Area Commission, though I am not representing the commission here tonight. I am here to speak as a neighborhood advocate and a future CCS parent. The University District is a dense and diverse collection of neighborhoods, including Old North, Iuka Ravine, Sohud, where I live, Denison Place, OSU Campus, Glen Echo, and Wineland Park. Most of the district is zoned for Wineland Park Elementary or Hubbard Mastery School, with a smaller portion for Clinton Elementary. All of these, as you know, feed into Dominion Middle School. So I have reached out to parents in the district to try to gather feedback about the proposed move of Dominion to the Old North High School building, which also happens to be inside of the University District, so that our neighborhood is included in these discussions, and to make clear the reach that this issue has across neighborhoods. I'm here to share with you what I have heard. Overall, this feedback has been positive toward the task force's recommendation. I've heard concerns about the current conditions at Dominion and about future possibilities should this plan not be enacted. In other words, what are the alternatives? I have also heard surprise that the board chose not to approve the recommendation, given the unanimous task force support and apparent support throughout the community. I have not heard any objections to the plan, though I did speak to families who feel neutral because they have children in lottery schools or are moving to charters. And on this last point, I would add that longer-term residents of the University District, like myself, have been trying to bolster the neighborhood's reputation as a good place to raise a family, as a family-friendly area, rather than one that is solely comprised of rowdy college students, though we have our share. But do not be fooled by the name. There are a lot more of us there than it might seem, who are not in that category of rowdy college students, including my little 3-year-old. Our neighborhood schools are obviously a crucial part of that project to get people to stay and get people to embrace this area as a neighborhood that is functional for a diverse group of people. And allowing to conclude, I think that allowing Dominion to remain overcrowded wouldn't be a good way to serve current families, as seems clear from other, what I've seen from the report and feedback that we've gotten from people familiar with the situation at Dominion. And it also wouldn't be a good way to attract future families. And future scenarios whereby Dominion stays in place but has to reduce enrollment seem destined to require measures that would lead to a rupturing of community fabric across neighborhoods and threaten both the diversity and equity in our neighborhood schools. So I am asking the board to give renewed consideration to the task force's recommendation 3.
Thank you, Ms. Squires. Are there clarifying questions for Ms. Squires? Thank you for taking the time to address us. Our next speaker is Jeff Dew, and he is here to talk about moving Dominion Middle School to Columbus North International High School, and he is requesting that we consider moving Dominion Middle School to Columbus North International High School. Good evening.
Good evening. President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. Thank you for your time this evening and consideration for this move. I'm the parent of a 6th grader at Dominion Middle School and a 3rd grader at Clinton Elementary. I'm also a board member of Clintonville Go Public, and we are a nonprofit that supports all the schools in the Whetstone Pathway. Over the past 7 years, we have raised over $100,000 in fundraisers for these schools. I have had the privilege to work with so many passionate parents, community members, and businesses. Why is this important? This move will no doubt present challenges. Our organization has a network that offers its full support to this move. I'm a summer camp director, and I think of myself as an educator outside of the classroom. And I have been so impressed with the leadership at Dominion Middle School. Principal Flanagan, the teachers, and all of the staff at Dominion Middle School have been outstanding. I think that they would have no problem transitioning to the new school and fully support it and hope that we can all come together on this issue. Thank you again for your time.
Do any clarifying questions, colleagues? Thank you very much for being here this evening. We appreciate it. And our last speaker is Mr. Stephen Hardwick, and he is here to talk about the proposal of merging foreign language immersions and Dominion Middle School, and he's requesting that the board approve recommendation number 3 regarding merging language immersions with Dominion Middle School into Columbus North International High School. Good evening. Good to see you.
Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and Interim Superintendent Dr. Sanford. I served on the facilities task force and on the previous ad hoc one, and I want to start by explaining why I thought this proposal 3 was adequate, then why I thought it was awesome, and then talk about where we're going from here. One thing I learned on I've probably been to 36 facilities meetings now, if you include all the public forums. One thing I've learned is the purpose of facilities is to provide space for kids to learn. That's pretty much the beginning and end of it. And why this was adequate is, first of all, it keeps our pathway together, and that's something that's just absolutely essential. It solves a serious overcrowding problem that we have at Dominion. I just checked, 49 kids were, exact official figure, 49 kids last year were kicked out of the school. We're not allowed to go, neighborhood kids from not just Clintonville, but Linden and Wineland Park, the university area, Victorian Village, were not allowed to go to their neighborhood school because it's too full. 31 kids to this point this year have done it. That's just the figure through today. And every week this board delays, every month this board delays is more kids who aren't allowed to go to the neighborhood school. So it is urgent. This board, if it doesn't act, the longer it takes, the more kids are not allowed to go to their neighborhood school. But that's just why it's adequate. What made this absolutely awesome is that around 900 kids will learn more stuff at this building than they can learn where they are right now. 900 kids with better learning. The kids at Dominion will get access to French and Mandarin, and that's just absolutely, again, awesome, an awesome opportunity. The kids at the immersion programs can get access to a much richer general curriculum than they can right now. A variety of math classes, science classes, arts classes, music classes, a fabulous drama program at Dominion. They only get that access if these are moved together. More kids learning. And another reason is it moves Dominion right smack in the middle of its attendance district. Right now it's well in the north into Clintonville. Now it's actually north is just on the boundary on the other side of the Clintonville Area Commission. It's in the University Area Commission, and I think that's a wonderful thing to move it to the center of the district. That means that the Wineland Park kids don't have to go any farther than the kids in Beechwold, and that's much fairer than it is right now. One thing I also noticed when I first saw this proposal, I was a little worried because I have a third grader at Clinton who's probably going to be who's thriving there, who's probably going to be thriving at Dominion in 3 years. I also have a sixth grader at the Gifted Academy who, lottery willing, has her sights on Kaz. So I know that 3 years from now, I could very well have a kid at both schools, and I'd have to be able to look them in the eye and say, why is one of you at North and one of you not? And so I figured I have as much incentive as anyone to get that recommendation right. But in the end, I thought that was easy. It was a much easier decision because I couldn't vote to take opportunities away from 900 kids where they could learn better than they can right now. And again, I know this board wants more information. I'm fine with that. If this board can find something that's more awesome, that can do something better than provide 900 kids a better education than they're getting now, I'm all for it. I'd love to be proven wrong. And I promise to participate in good faith in that process. What I ask from the board is that this board keep an open mind and be open to the possibility that maybe helping 900 kids get a better education is the best result. And that's what I ask from the board, and I ask the board not to do this expeditiously as possible so we can stop kicking kids out of their neighborhood school. Thank you.
Are there any clarifying questions from my colleagues? Mr. Hardwick, thank you. Thank you for your service to the task force. Thanks for your continued engagement.
Thank you, President Baker.
Yes, sir. A clarifying question for Professor Kogan? Okay, very well then.
Just really quick. Professor Kogan, did you pull all of this from ode.gov? Or did you get it from the district?
No, that's from the reportcards.ode website, except for the free reduced lunch. As you know, Columbus has community eligibility, so all the official data will show 100%. So there's a separate file that ODE keeps that shows the actual number of families who are directly certified. So that link at the bottom will take you to that file. But everything else is from the report cards website. And that's the composition of the elementary schools, not necessarily the students who go on from those schools to Dominion.
Got it. Based on the last report card?
Based on the last report, correct.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I just have some clarifying questions and just a few statements. But, because I want to make sure I know what I've heard, and I just want to ask the administration a few questions and offer some things to you. But just really quickly, just by a show of hands, how many of y'all thought that this recommendation was dead? Would you raise your hand? Are y'all clear that it's not dead, that right now they're just studying more? We're trying to get more information about all the moving pieces. I think that's really important because I don't think that was well communicated. At the table, so the recommendation 3 came to the table, but our recommendation task force did not include any provisions for COS. There were no recommendations for COS. So at the table, Board Member Hudson added that we need, despite the task force's recommendations, we need to add COS to the conversation. So while some see that those recommendations was all total complete without adding cause and probably Woodward Park, it wasn't complete. I'm not sure that people know that Woodward Park had modulars for years, and right now, their entire sixth grade class is at a whole nother building called Walden. So there's Woodward Park at Walden. Well, let me take it back. Alpine is first, second, and third. Then they go to Northgate for fourth and fifth. Then they go to Walden for sixth. Then they go to Woodward Park for seventh and eighth. And then they go to Beechcroft and Northland for 9 and 12. There's no way we could address overcrowding and not look at Woodward Park and help them too, right? And so when we ask for additional information, we need to address overcrowding so all of our students have pathways that make sense, that help them move seamlessly, to reduce the number of transitions, which are harder on younger people. And as opposed to thinking what we'll have, we want to get some data to say, yes, this is what we'll have. But in a span of 2 weeks, we went from one school wanting to go to North to now maybe 2 schools wanting to go to North. So to the administration, I know we asked you to study this and bring us back information. In that, could you bring us back how many buildings have the capacity to hold 900 students, and which student bodies can't fit together because there's too many? So a Kaiser and a Dominion can't be in the building. We can never project the number of global, but when you bring us back those recommendations, could you bring us back building capacities as well? And I'm sure, to Board Member Hudson's point, we'll need a work session so we can talk, or another meeting so we could talk through this more fully. And I know the administration is going to speak to every school individually. I will say, though, I was very disappointed at the thought that people wanted to kick people out of the feeder pattern. That's disturbing for me. I have a niece in the Clinton feeder pattern who's of color, who I would hope is welcomed. And I know how Dottie runs her school, so I know she has that building and the culture, and I've had kids in that culture. But the thought of that gives us pause to say, we need to work this out. And I know this community, we like working together, and they want it to be a great place for everybody. So if you will offer us time to work through it, see how we can make it work for both. It's kind of like Clintonville. All of y'all got a kid in one school together. So they got one in Kai's, one in Kenwood, one in Dominion. So this got to work for like the whole family, right? But we really do need to study it and make sure all the moving parts, those that are very vocal, and to Board Member Reyes's point, those who you haven't seen, but who spoke to us personally and privately or through via email and other concerns. And this plan doesn't just move Dominion. It impacts global. It impacts international. It impacts French immersion. It impacts Spanish immersion. And again, we don't have voices here today, but they have voices as well. And it impacts the people who want to move in those communities. And I want to make sure that as you're doing the study and administration brings it back, you bring back very detailed conversations with all of those stakeholders, and to give us some understanding, do you want to move or do you want to alleviate overcrowding? Because Woodward Park is alleviating overcrowding. Would that solution work for you? That's a question that we need to find an answer to, and we're committed to finding an answer, because they've alleviated overcrowding, and they had modulars for years, and not one parent came and complained about a modular. We decided to move the modulars out because it looked like a little modular city. Like, okay, we got to move them, but their solution may or may not work. So we have to find out, does Dominion, do you want a 6th grade school, right? And then the other students move. So we don't know what those extra ideas are, but I'm asking administration, when you come back and study, to bring us those, and to bring us back some more information about capacity, and actually about all of those things at North too, heating, air. If you can bring us back some information about what that facility is actually like, because International hasn't been absolutely ecstatic about it either. So I just offer to the community, we're listening, we're trying to get more information, and we will continue to spend more time in discussion, and we ask that the board keep studying this, give us back more information so that we can bring, when the resolution comes back, it's coming back, it's not dead, that we'll have more data and more input on how to make the best decision for all the parties involved. Thank you, President Baker.
Thank you, Board Member Gibbs. What I think I might like to ask is that we try to set a date for a work session so that we can have a thorough discussion. And I'd like to maybe ask Dr. Roush if he can coordinate through a doodle poll or whatever you think is the best way to try to set a date for that work session so that we can have as quickly as possible a thorough discussion, a board discussion about specifically those recommendations that we asked the administration to continue to study. Board Member Hudson?
I guess I would say first that Board Member Gibbs just asked the administration for a raft of information. I think it would be very important that first we hear their analysis of the task force recommendations. There's so much that's in there already. A lot of this has been done, and we are relitigating issues that have really been thoroughly vetted. And I think before we ask for more info, that we at least go over what we do have, and then begin to see if we can make decisions. And I mean, there's other, it's so disappointing that we went the route we did, and now we're not talking about any of these issues today. And instead, we're talking about, we've kicked the can down the road. But we have a lot in front of us, and you know, there was a lot of thought that was put into this about the geography of the children so that they were not too far from home. This isn't about, you know, where we're putting successful programs. It's about having the kids be in the best spot they can be to learn. And I, in the words of our last speaker, and so President Baker, I would just say I think we should put this on our agenda for the next meeting. We go through those recommendations and vote on them.
Board Member, Ms. Gibbs, Ms. Gibbs.
I'm sorry, Hardy, but to the point of.
Ms. Gibbs, I'm sorry. Would you, well, but Mr. Brown's hand was up behind you. Mr. Brown, or would you yield to the lady?
Sure.
Ms. Gibbs?
So to the point of about it being vetted, if we felt like we had all the information, and because we changed it at the table, now we don't, we added the cost factor. So either we're going to commit to meeting and working through it in a work session or another meeting, and we're going to talk through it and do the data, or we're going to ask the administration to do it, or we're not. But we're not kicking the can down the road when we say you have to bring us back answers and help us put it together. But it's so.
Board Member Hudson, the chair has not recognized you.
So what I'd like to say is this. I support the putting it on the agenda so we can get all those informations. I support the task force bringing us the analysis of what they have. I support the additional information coming from the administration as soon as you have it on the overcrowding and all of the options and scenarios and what it will cost, because we're, as you say, we're going into the budget. Tell us how much this is going to be. Tell me what is the facility condition that we're going to send them to? How much is it going to cost to get them together? And is all the facilities we're sending everybody to ready to receive them? And where are you going to move those staff to that are in Brookhaven so that you can make room for everybody? Like, these are a lot of moving parts. So I'm not disagreeing with you, Board Member Hudson. I'm saying I want to give y'all time to bring me back all those answers so we'll have them. Because we don't want to agree to something and then and y'all bring us a solution and you're stuck with it. So give us the information and the data, and you've already agreed to, and ask for guidance. There was an email with a ton of questions asking for guidance that has already been out there that the administration has asked us to respond to. So they asked for that guidance from us, and you got to share their input so that they can begin to present that data and that, and it can come back so we can make this decision.
Board Member Brown?
Thank you. At this point, we've got a lot of work to do, and I hope that we're going to get at it and get at it quickly. That's important. I want to thank all of the people that are here that have spoken to us, those that are here supporting the speakers and otherwise interested, and all of those that have written to us, whether by email or old-fashioned mail. Your efforts make a difference. And I will suggest and ask that you continue to keep pressure on us, that you ask for the things that you want, give good reasons for it, and continue to push for good education for all of our students. That helps us be able to say yes. I want to be able to say yes to a lot of the ideas that are being advocated. And as you can see, there are some differences of opinion here within the board, and I just ask that you continue your efforts to get us to address the questions and to do so quickly. I don't know on every item what the outcome is going to be, but we do need to really get into this and fully consider the task force recommendations and fully discuss those. There's a lot there. The task force did a lot of very good work, and unfortunately, the board, in my view, disrespected that work and the task force at the last meeting, but we have an opportunity now, going forward, to get at the task force and recommendations and address those fully.
Ms. Gibbs, Ms. Gibbs, Ms. Gibbs.
To give deeper and broader look to the policy.
Ms. Gibbs.
I'm not mixing. I know them both.
Ms.
No,
Gibbs.
I'm not. But you're not going to be disrespectful.
Ms. Gibbs, you are out of order.
Saying we're disrespectful.
And I do believe that Board Member Hudson may have been next.
No, enough.
All right. Yes, thank you all very much. Now, any other questions or comments before we prepare to adjourn into executive session, Mr. Vice President?
Just very quickly. Thank you so very much for each and every one of you being here. I really deeply appreciate it. So my question about fidelity to the language immersion programs is based on the idea that this is virtually creating a new feeder system where our immersion programs go all the way up to Columbus North International, that would be at Brookhaven. I have seen the benefit that this language immersion process has had, not only with my children, but also with so many others beyond this room. So I want to be sure that from an academic standpoint, that these youngsters have the opportunity to enjoy some things that are currently in play and strengthen their academic ability to move into work, move into higher education, move into different spaces successfully with that language piece right behind them. That's a big concern for me. And for me, that's one of the reasons why I thought that we should put this to the side for further study and dialogue. And I'm glad that we're going to do that. I lastly want to say this. I think it's really the wrong space to be in when we use terms like disrespected. I come from a school where disrespect was much more blatant and much more flagrant than disagreeing on something and saying, here, we agree here that we'll change some boundaries. We took those recommendations into account. We'll be definitive as a board around saying that any movement of Lyndon McKinley to East is a bad idea. And not just because we felt that way individually, I certainly did, but also because a community vehemently came to a number of community meetings where most of us at the table were present and shared with their passion, shared with their fervor, that they wanted to maintain their school and that we should do that. And we made that decision, and we were thanked for it. Moving this discussion forward, I think it's important for us to watch the language that we use with each other. We're not each other's enemy. We both have the best interests of all of our students at heart. We have the best interests. Some things have to be put back on hold for further review because we want to ask the questions and get deeper understanding. And be sure, folks, that we are not making hasteful decision on something, whether it is thought to be emotive or whether it's thought to be study long, study wrong. But at the end of the day, I just want to encourage you all, as my board member Brown did, to continue to stay in front of us, but let's broaden the dialogue to ensure that we have some other stakeholders involved in the conversation, like our principals, and some other folks who have direct hands and connectivity to folks in this room whose children go to this school or you're a resident in that very neighborhood. So moving forward, I want to ensure again that Dr. Stanford and our staff, that we are including some very grassroots stakeholders in the conversation who are our building leaders, and that they are as much as an efficacious part of this process as our local community of neighbors, parents, and friends. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Okay, having heard all of that, colleagues, I do believe that this issue is important enough that we should set aside time for a work session, and so I'll ask Dr. Roush to work with all of you.
We have a meeting in 2 weeks. We should have it at our meeting, and we have a next regular scheduled meeting.
Board Member Hudson.
I'm available that day. It's a meeting, it's a board meeting.
Board Member Hudson.
Let's do board work at a board meeting, for God. It's ridiculous.
You are out of order. You are out of order. I don't consider meeting as a board to discuss important matters a waste of time.
We wasted so much time.
This conversation has concluded. All right, so I will ask Dr. Roush to attempt to identify a date for a work session. All right, and I'm going to ask Vice President Cole to offer a motion. But before I do that, I do want to thank everyone who took the time to come here this evening and address the board. It means a lot to us. We appreciate your passion, your involvement, your engagement, and we look forward to it continuing. Thank you very much. Mr. Vice President?
Thank you, Mr. President. I move that the Board of Education recess into executive session per section 121.22 G1 to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of a public employee or official.
Second.
Vice President Cole?
Yes, sir.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes?
Mr. Brown? Sure. That motion carried.
Thank you. The board will now recess into executive session. We will return to these chambers after that concludes. Thank you very much. Happy Thanksgiving.
Yes, sir.
All right, thank you very much for your patience, everyone. Thank you, colleagues. We are reconvening out of executive session. So the next item on our agenda is item 4.1, a resolution recognizing the week of November 11th through 17th, 2018 as Ohio Public Education Appreciation Week. And I will read it. Yes, I'll go quickly. Resolution to recognize November 11th through 17th as Ohio Public Education Appreciation Week. Whereas a whole bunch of things happened a long time ago, and whereas we'd like to recognize that, and whereas the intent of the week is to encourage public education and affirm its purpose during 1 week in November, despite attempts at privatization, and by doing so to send a message to our students, our educators, and our communities that we support their efforts to be ready for success and believe in their mission to promote the happiness of mankind, and so on. And while it's important to recognize and encourage public education at least 1 week a year, the Columbus City Schools Board of Education is committed to achieving its mission that each student is highly educated, prepared for leadership and service, and empowered for success as a citizen in a global community. 52 weeks a year, which includes advocating for equitable and adequate school funding and transparent and fair accountability systems. Now therefore be it resolved that the Columbus City Schools Board of Education hereby recognizes November 11th through 17th, 2018 as Ohio Public Education Appreciation Week, and be it further resolved that the Board of Education calls upon Governor-elect DeWine to demonstrate his commitment to public education by addressing the broken school funding system, the flawed local report card, and the inequitable graduation requirements. That is a motion.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Colleagues, hearing no discussion, Mr. Treasurer?
Ms. Gibbs? Yes. Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Motion carried.
I thank you, colleagues. Let's move on then to item 4.3, a resolution to recognize Larry Braverman for 20 years of service to Columbus City Schools. And I'm going to ask the Vice President to read the resolution, and it's a brief one.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. It's my personal honor to recognize Mr. Larry Braverman for his 20 years of service to the Columbus City School District. Whereas Larry Braverman has demonstrated his commitment to public service through the practice of law, serving as an Assistant Attorney General, Section Chief, and then Deputy Chief Counsel to the Ohio Attorney General, an attorney in private practice, and as Associate and General Counsel for Columbus City Schools. And whereas Mr. Braverman has announced his retirement from Columbus City Schools effective December 4th, 2018, after having served the district for over 20 years, and whereas Mr. Braverman has protected the interests of the district and its students, families, and residents through his advice and counsel, and whereas Mr. Braverman, as former student and now soon-to-be former employee, embodies the spirit of success that is Columbus City Schools, now therefore be it resolved that the Columbus City School Board of Education hereby recognizes Larry Braverman for his 20 years of dedicated service to the students, families, staff, and Board of Education of Columbus City Schools.
Moved and seconded. So, Mr. Treasurer, would you call the roll on that one, please?
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown? Yes. Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs? Motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So the reason we hesitate is because Mr. Braverman intends to retire, and so we don't really care for that notion. But we do want to recognize and congratulate him. So if you don't mind, let's give him a round of applause. And let's take, do you mind taking a picture with us? All right, come on up front. Real quick. All right. Yes, I do. Mr. Braverman, thank you. Do you have any words of wisdom you'd like to share? Briefly.
Just a very few words given the hour, especially after sweating out the vote. But I just wanted to thank you and your predecessor boards and all of the extraordinary people that I've had the good fortune to work with over these last several decades, for giving me this opportunity and for making my job one that was, for me, just spectacular. So again, thank you, and best of luck to everyone as you continue to do the important work that you do.
Thank you, and this is Mr. Braverman's last meeting, so we'll offer him Godspeed. Thank you. All right, let's move on then, unless there are any comments from board members. Let's call on our superintendent, Dr. Stanford. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. President, members of the board. Just as any good Thanksgiving dinner requires a lot of preparation in the kitchen before the actual meal, mind you, my wife won't let me anywhere near the kitchen, let alone on a holiday. My job at the house is to do the dishes after the Thanksgiving meal is done. But I digress. Our academic and operations team are also hard at work at this time of year, preparing for a successful winter season. And so I've got 3 quick updates for the Board of Education. First is our academic surge. As you will recall from last month, this board approved our investment of $2 million to launch the academic surge in both elementary reading and high school geometry. The goal of this surge is simple. We want to intensify efforts around key curriculum areas, giving our students additional skills and supports concentrated on improving their skills identified through our analysis of the recent local report card issued by the state of Ohio. Key to these efforts are additional supports for our teachers. We've developed an intensive professional development course that's user-focused, giving our teachers hands-on tools and techniques that they can immediately use in the classroom to help our students who struggle the most. The first workshops are already underway, and I attended the one at Fort Hays over the weekend. And I can tell you that the teachers who were there were engaged, and they were having a good time working with the facilitators on learning the information of the workshop. We've enlisted nearly 500 teachers in these specialized professional development opportunities, both in our reading surge for elementary school and in our geometry surge with high school math teachers. As I said, our educators are engaged, they're empowered, and more importantly, they share an intense sense of urgency to make sure that our students have what they need in order to be successful, that this board has entrusted them with the vote that you gave them a couple of weeks ago. At the same time, as a part of our rising surge, our curriculum team is re-engineering a winter break reading kit that we will provide to our students and their families with essential learning activities that they can utilize during the winter break, so they won't have that winter break loss of learning when they come back in January. And soon, we will encourage our 2nd and 3rd grade families to sign up for the expanded Super Saturday Reading Academy. And there's a flyer at your places that talks about the Super Saturday Reader Academy. So families that are listening and that are in the audience, keep your eyes and ears ready for the announcements about the Super Saturday Reading Academies in the 2nd semester. As you know, with these Super Saturday Reading Academies, we are doubling those weekend sessions to cover 8 weekends. We've also expanded the number of locations so more students can have this opportunity to get better at reading. And we're providing transportation, so there is really no excuse not to get your student to one of these sites throughout the city so that they can get extra tutoring assistance. In December, as we return from Thanksgiving break, you'll see more of our outreach to families and students to sign up for the Super Saturday Reading Academy. And I just want to say this is not only for those students who may be struggling, but if students want to get ahead, they are more than welcome to come to the Super Saturday Reading Academies to even strengthen their already strong skills in reading. Another piece of preparation underway relates to keeping our families warm and informed this coming winter. As we all know, our recent flurries and freezing the other day are proof that winter weather is no longer just right around the corner, it is here. And this season, we want all of our families to stay warm and informed about this year's inclement weather. Recently, a reminder we sent home to our families, encouraging them to download the Columbus City Schools mobile app. As you know, the Columbus City Schools mobile app is the very first place that we communicate snow day alerts and inclement weather alerts. Before Twitter, before Facebook, before the crawl at the bottom of the TV news, you can find out about winter weather on our Columbus City Schools mobile app and what that winter weather impact will be on our schools. The free Columbus City Schools mobile app provides an instant flow of communication about cancellations from the district. You can find the app by searching Columbus City Schools in the App Store on your phone or your mobile device. The app is a good start to staying informed, but we also encourage our families to have a plan in place for what to do after the alert to stay warm. What is the plan when a student must stay home or come home early because of bad weather? And we want our parents to be prepared. First, we need our families to think about supervision and whether their child is going to be at home and be responsible to be home by themselves. If they can't be at home by themselves, then we need to find supervision for them or access some of the community services that are usually available, like the city opening up the rec centers to make sure kids have a place to go. Second, parents and families need to ask, is there nutritious food if they're at home available for the children to eat for breakfast and lunch? Third, if classes are dismissed early, does your child know to go home or to another location where there are adults and family members? Remember, if your child is under the age of 8 years old, someone will need to meet them at the bus stop. And fourth and last, but not least, what is your child going to do during that time at home? That's very important. We are encouraging our families to make sure that their young people have engaging and safe activities to engage in if they are at home for an unexpected amount of time. Getting those alternative plans in place today will make any snow day in the future a success for your child and that they will be able to be safe and sound. One quick side note, I want to quickly recognize the Eastmore Academy Warriors football team. EA! They are preparing for success as they get set to play in the state semifinal playoff football game against Kinston High School. The game is this Friday at the Woody Hayes Quaker Stadium in New Philadelphia, and so if you can get there to support them, we absolutely encourage that. We are proud of these young men and will be rooting for them to be successful this weekend. Finally, tonight, I want to offer a personal message of thanks on this Tuesday before Thanksgiving. There are no classes tomorrow, as we hold the Wednesday before Thanksgiving every year as an opportunity for our schools to offer parent-teacher conferences with our families. And then our entire district is closed on both Thursday and Friday in celebration of the holiday. I hope during this brief holiday that every person connected to Columbus City Schools, students, families, staff, and stakeholders, take this special moment to both give and receive thanks for the blessings that have been given to us and for the loved ones in our lives. No matter your income, your zip code, your faith, or your challenges, there is a common good that lifts us all. But only when we are all a part of something that supports each other, loving each other, and helping each other, that it becomes very special. We say it all the time in the district. Columbus City Schools is truly a family, one that works best when we embrace each other as a part of the family, not just some, but all. We are at our best when every voice gets heard and when every child comes first in our decision-making. And this is what we refer to as the spirit of family in Columbus City Schools and our commitment to the spirit of success. I am most thankful for this holiday, for the spirit of family, and for the spirit of success in Columbus City Schools. President Baker and members of the board, that concludes tonight's report, and happy Thanksgiving, everyone.
Thank you, Dr. Stanford. Happy Thanksgiving to you as well. Colleagues, any questions or comments on Superintendent's report? Hearing none, we thank you very much. And let's move on to our internal auditor. Have you anything to share with the board this evening, Madam Internal Auditor?
Thank you, President Baker. I do want to share that Audit and Accountability is meeting November the 29th, 3:30 in the Cabinet Room. I just want to wish my colleague, Mr. Braverman, a very happy retirement. It's been a pleasure working with you. And to all the board members and the listening audience and my colleagues, I wish you all a happy and reflective Thanksgiving.
Thank you, Madam Internal Auditor. Thank you. Any questions for the Internal Auditor? Thank you very much. Let's move on then to our treasurer. Mr. Treasurer,
Yes, good evening.
the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
This evening, we have the monthly financial report for the month of October. This report was reviewed last Wednesday by the FAC, and at that meeting, we welcomed Board Member Cole, if I'm not mistaken. That was his first meeting since his recent appointment to the committee. So that was good because we then had a quorum to proceed with the business. So through the month of October, on the revenue side, we were up 20 million year to date. That's about a 3 million gain over the previous month. Total expenditures were under plan again this month, and that's driven the year-to-date favorable variance to about 11.2 million under plan. All in all, that combines to giving us about 31 million more in cash than what the plan called for. Looking at the major categories of revenue, the committee focused in on state aid this month, and it ran under plan for the month, but over for the year, we're at about 1.9 million above plan. We looked at that 1.9, about $1 million of it, we believe, based upon the numbers from ODE, we can expect that will be a sustainable dollar amount above plan for the balance of the year. The balance of that 900,000 is a timing variance that we think will work itself out. So we should be at least $1 million above plan by the end of the year. Keep in mind, this is about a $355 million line item, so to be within $1 million, it's probably more luck than it is skill, but that's what we looked at so far. All other revenues are running about 10 million above plan, and we took a look at that. What jumped out at us there was the other revenue categories you can see on this graph. The bulk of that was 3.8 million in Medicaid reimbursement, which is a timing issue. We had expected it later on in the year, and it comes in at this time. So it's a very difficult item to time. We just know it's going to be about $4 million. We just don't know what month it is. It's just very difficult to pick which month, but at least we know that that's the culprit. Other contributors to the 10.7 million variance, as in some previous months, are interest income at about 2.2 million above plan, and pilots, or payment in lieu of taxes, at about 4.7 million over plan. I noted for the board, or for the committee, that I've spoken with our counsel on that, and we're going to begin compiling all the cases that we've got that we know are going to be paying their pilots and pay them over time, and get hopefully at least a 2-year picture on what we can expect or know that's going to come in, and that will help us not only explain these variances, but also to factor that into the forecast so that we may raise that estimate in the forecast the next time we get around to doing that. So that was the focus there on the revenues. On the expenditure side, again, personnel expenditures are the ones that are running dollar amount the most under plan at 9.8 under plan, although close for this month. On a variance basis, it still is running 9.8 under plan. And I remind you, as I do the committee, we factored some of that, if not all of that, into the forecast that we did in October. So based upon these numbers in our monthly reports, we not only expected to, but we needed to in order to line up to the forecast to run under plan by that kind of a dollar amount. Charter school payments are right on plan. And when we took a closer look at other expenditures, purchase services was a month that picked up a little steam for running under plan, falling to about about another 2.4 million under plan, getting to about 3.3 million under plan. So we were very close last month, but this past month, it had a fairly significant variance, so we'll watch that very closely. The only other item that caught our eye was other uses. As you can see there, it was a little over 5 million on a 3 million plan year to date, and that had to do to transfers and advances out. And again, that's a timing issue. We anticipate them coming, would have happened later on in the year, but in fact, those were executed this past month. The committee also took a look at a by object budget summary that I shared with them, breaking out all the objects within purchase services, supplies, and capital outlay and other, to give them a better picture of some of the detail to see how we're doing on a budget basis. And the committee also received from me a historical cash balance report for the Operation Fix-It monies, primarily to give them an indication of when we might be back to market to fund the balance of the projects. As you can remember, we passed an issue of $125 million, yet we only borrowed $75 million the first round because that's what we anticipated spending through the first 2.5 to 3 years. At this point, we're down to about 37% unencumbered cash, and until that number gets down to closer to 20%, I won't contemplate going back to market. The timing of that will potentially be next summer, but we're working with our municipal advisors, and we're going to review that again in January, see where we stand, have a conversation perhaps in February, and then get some of the steps starting to get the ball rolling for a summer financing of the balance of the $50 million. So other than that, those were primarily the three topics. We always review the budget calendar. That season is coming up again here in the very near future. I know the Executive Director Gooding has already sent out building budgets and has met with the executive leadership team and talked about when departmental budgets will fire that process up in January. Interesting twist this year is we're going to be using our Munis system more for this rather than using just an Excel model-based system. So that'll be a tremendous learning curve, but trying to use the systems that we have in place. So again, for October, revenues are up, year-to-date expenditures are down. We're moving in the direction we anticipate, and we'll obviously continue to monitor this month to month. That concludes my report.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer.
Have a great holiday.
Thank you. Are there any questions for the Treasurer? I would like to say that Mr. Peretti, who left us, had been a member of FAC, Finance Appropriations Committee, and so Board Member Hudson and I agreed that I would appoint Vice President Cole to serve on the committee, and so he was at the last meeting. So thank you, Vice President Cole, for your willingness to serve, and thank you, Chair Hudson, for your agreement on that. So, having said all that, that concludes your report? Yes, sir. Nothing else from or for the Treasurer. Let's carry on then, shall we? Our consent agenda is the next item. Is there a motion that we accept it as presented?
So moved.
And having said that, actually, I want to say, do you mind if we pull 11.5 out of there? If there's no objection, this is actually a resolution we'll be voting on after our second consent, or after our second executive session.
Yes.
So if there's no objection, we're going to pull 11.5 out and take it up after executive session. Okay, any questions on any piece of legislation contained within the consent agenda this evening, or any other comments? Board Member Gibbs?
Just want to congratulate the team that's continuing the great work in the IB program at COS and this state syllabi literacy. Then both of those look like exciting opportunities for our students.
Thank you for that. Anything else? Yes, Mr. Brown.
Yeah, just as to 15.4, the city helping to fund equipment for our career tech students that are going into construction trades. I think it's a great idea. I know from asking our administrative team that the equipment is valuable to those students, not only while they're students, but that they can carry that with them into their careers if they go into the construction trades. That it is, fully professional equipment, and that those who work in the trades are required to purchase those things themselves, rather than have those furnished to them. And, it's a great idea, and I have no doubt that the students who receive that equipment are going to appreciate it right away, but I think they're going to appreciate it for quite a few years to come. So, great idea, great item.
That's a good call out. And would Director Johnson like to share anything on that particular item other than receive our gratitude? Thank you. Please take that back to the mayor. We appreciate it very much. A great partnership. Any other comments, questions? Seeing none, I beg your pardon. Yes, Mr. Brown.
Thank the donors. We've got Rotary coming up with $2,500, Orthopedic One to buy a sign for $1,150, and Friends of Indianola PTO and 2 items coming up with nearly $10,000. Those are very nice gifts, and I know they'll get thank yous for that.
Absolutely. If there is nothing else then, as it relates to the consent agenda, Ms. Gibbs, beg your pardon.
Just on 11.1, if Mr. Braverman and his final duties can just provide a brief summary of this, the agreement with Groveport Madison. Can you speak a bit to this?
Yes, I'd be happy to. President Baker, members of the board, board member Gibbs, this agreement would be between this Board of Education, the Board of Education of the Groveport Madison Local School District, following the instructions that this board issued back in May of 2016 to negotiate with suburban districts which were participating in win-win. We've been involved in negotiations with Groveport Madison with respect to their borders and with respect to revenue that comes from certain territories, and this agreement would in sum provide that the borders are permanent with the exception of a total of 7 parcels that will be transferred from Groveport Madison Local School District to Columbus City School District. The district will also get certain revenue from territories in and adjacent to the Lockbourne Air Base, potentially based on growth in value of those properties over the next 7 years. And the agreement will pretty much make the boundaries permanent with those limited exceptions that I've spoken about.
Is this the final of all the settlements?
There are actually some other suburban school districts that we have not concluded agreements with or which we haven't started those discussions yet, and that we'll see over time between now and 2022 what happens with them.
Thank you very much.
And I'd like to thank the General Counsel and Treasurer and others who have been involved in these negotiations. I know it's been in play for quite some time, so thank you for helping to bring this to a positive resolution. We appreciate it. Anything else, colleagues? All right. Mr. Treasurer, would you like to call the roll?
Ms. Reyes?
Yes.
President Baker?
Yes.
Mr. Brown?
Yes, except as to 11.3 is a no.
Vice President Cole?
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs?
Yes.
Ms. Hudson?
Yes.
That motion carried.
Okay. Thank you, colleagues. Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. So we do have a student here with us who was going to speak on IB, and so if my colleagues will indulge me, I'm actually going to call on Ms. Gillison to help to introduce and set the table for this presentation.
Thank you, President Baker, to Vice President Cole. We have in our midst a senior at CAUSE in the IB program, and also a senior who did attend the scholarship application workshop this weekend. Very active young man. His name is Andrew Pierce.
I'm a little tall, so I'm sorry. Just a tad, yeah. Good evening, President Baker, Vice President Cole, Treasurer Bohoric, Internal Auditor Smith, members of the board, and interim Superintendent Dr. Stanford. I'd like to first thank my principal, Daryl Sanders, and the entire COS teaching staff for giving me this opportunity to speak in front of the board. I also want to thank the students of COS for allowing me to speak on their behalf as well. As Ms. Gilson just said, my name is Andrew Pierce, and I am an IB diploma student over at COS. Over the years, COS has been recognized for many things, but what drew a young Dominion 8th grader like myself to it was this IB program. It has been this program that has pushed me to be a better student, better scholar, and better ambassador of COS. Unlike other classes offered at COS, the IB curriculum prepares students for college-level coursework, research, and scholarship. This has been shown both in my studies at COS and abroad. In school, I'm a part of the diploma program, which dives deeper into knowledge itself through two key concepts, these being the extended essay and the theory of knowledge. In writing my extended essay, which is kind of like a senior thesis, I am studying the socioeconomic effects of Mayor Michael Coleman's 2002 King Lincoln District Plan on the historic King Lincoln District of Columbus, Ohio. In relating to my theory of knowledge class, I am working on the social construct of racism, utilizing critical race theory to explain how subtle racism affects our daily lives. Also using supply-side economic theory, also strong mayor governance policies and models to show how Coleman was able to revitalize that dilapidated neighborhood. It is in these two IB exclusive subjects that my peers and I have felt how we are excelling and preparing for what college has for us. And I should know what high-level work has in store for me. Over the past 2 years, I have been given the privilege to travel to Oxford University, the Midwest Political Science Conference in Chicago, Illinois, and the IB World Student Conference in Washington, D.C., not only to represent COS as a whole, but CCS, Ohio, and even the United States on the world stage. It is in these classrooms and lecture halls that I have met with fellow IB students from China, Italy, Australia, and even students from Dublin Kaufman up the road to discuss international relations such as Brexit, the developing refugee crisis, and many others. It is in these world seminars that I give my own perspective that IB has prepared me for Keynesian economic theory, political models, and what it means to be an American in a hallowed space for scholarship, such as the Pembroke College, of which I got this tie. Thank you, Ms. Gilson. IB has given me this opportunity to travel the world and share my own experience as a young black male from an urban school district while having lunch with some of the most affluent people in our society. However, it is in this exposure that I'm reminded where I truly come from. When talking with students about how their IB schools have Zen rooms to give them mental health breaks before and after an IB test, I'm reminded of the image of my teachers and classmates having to wear our winter jackets in a room that is 50 degrees with cold air blowing out of its vents in November. When talking with friends from these IB schools, have provided them with Dyson hand dryers in their bathrooms, I'm reminded that I have to cram my 6'2" self into a tiny stall designed for a third grader. When talking with my friends from their IB schools that have provided them with talks from civic leaders and local celebrities, I'm reminded of my tiny auditorium that cannot fit the entire student body, let alone the students and their parents and administrators. But being an IB student, I don't solely rely on this qualitative data to support my experiences. The IB curriculum has taught me to support this with quantitative data. So because of this, I would have pointed to my COS students in the back who have developed a survey to give the student perspective to the board. In this survey of seniors, sophomores, freshmen, and juniors, it has been reported that 56.7% of the students in the school feel that the building contributes to noticeable discomfort. 74.6% state that the conditions inside the building, from falling pieces of ceiling to paint over mold patches to heat waves that cause staff to have heat strokes, have made it difficult to learn. 72.5% of students stated that the physical building does not provide them with a safe environment, with many citing the recent Transformer incident as dangerous and hazardous. These are just some of the statistics from the survey, and it was created from what me and my fellow IB students have learned in our IB curriculum. To support an argument with data, to support an argument with emotion. I have represented CCS on a local, state, national, and international stage with pride, but action needs to be taken to create a safe and 21st century learning environment so that more CCS students have the chance to travel abroad and show what CCS produces. You have seen the qualitative data, and I have just presented you with the quantitative data. We must take the necessary action it was required to make COS the school of the future and the school that the students represent. IB has taught me the importance of community and the critical role people and space play in an education. We understand that COS isn't the only building that is facing these ills. I stand here and advocate for all CCS students for safe, modern buildings to learn in. And when asked what IB has taught me, it has taught me that together, smart and intelligent working people in this room can work together to form a solution, partnering with students, community leaders, and the board to make a more safer, modern building for all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. How old are you?
So I just turned 18 last month. So.
Very good. Do you have anybody here with you? I know you have your principal here. Do you have any friends or family? I'd like to have them stand up and be recognized, if you don't mind.
So all the COS students left, they have homework to do.
They have homework to do, right?
But Dr. Tina Pierce is in the background. She's my mother. So I would give her a big round of applause.
Very good.
Hi, Ms. Gibbs.
And your fabulous principal is here with you as well. I know you acknowledged him earlier. So, colleagues, are there any questions? I know you have homework to do, so we won't keep you, but thank you for being here, and it was, yes, Ms. Hudson.
For your remarks. I just want to say, those students that you met with and had lunch, they had lunch with you. You didn't have lunch with them. It was an experience for them to be with you as well, and an honor.
Thank you, Ms. Hudson.
So, and I'd like to read the papers that you said you're writing or that you've written. I'd like to read them. So if you could send them to us, I'd like to share them with my colleagues on the board. They sound fascinating. I look forward to reading them.
Of course, yeah.
So we won't keep you any longer. Thank you very much, and you're welcome here anytime. We'd love to see you again sometime soon.
All right, thank you, President Baker.
Thank you. Have a good night. Happy Thanksgiving. Thank you, Dr. Pierce. All right, then let's move on, and that was relative to item 15.2 on your consent agenda, in case you were wondering. All right, let's move on then to announcements. Very briefly, I'll ask, actually before I do that, do you have anything to share from the consent agenda related to staff? Okay, thank you very much. Yes, sir. Mr. Brown, do you have a photo grid that you can share? So we're on to announcements. So very briefly, it was Paint the Plow today at Eastgate Elementary. And so you can see the plow there on the right side of the picture. So every year, we've done this for 3 or 4 years now, students paint a snowplow. That's a city snowplow. And these are the Eastgate Tigers, 4th and 5th graders who painted. You can see the mayor was there. That's Councilman Remy. That is their principal, Principal Wilson, and that is their teacher, Ms. Gonzalez. And so very proud of the students they painted. You can see they painted on the left, as you see at the left side of the plow is the Tuskegee Airmen. That represents the past. In the middle is a tiger for Tiger Pride, obviously. On the other side, you can't see, the students painted images of themselves as adults as the future, and they're wearing white coats. So they're scientists, and they're doctors, and they're nurses, and a number of them want to be teachers. An awesome event. So again, another partnership with the city. Thank you very much, Director Johnson. We appreciate that. Any other quick announcements? Board Member Gibbs.
Congratulations on the College Scholarship Workshop this weekend. Is that the picture? Is that the picture from the College Scholarship Workshop, where we had our students come from all over the city? If Ms. Gillison could speak to that, that would be amazing.
Thank you, President Baker, Vice President Cole, to Board Member Gibbs. This was our 3rd annual scholarship application workshop, and it was for every high school student with a 2.3 GPA and up. And we had Otterbein was there giving out scholarships, Toledo with scholarships, Columbus Foundation, I Know I Can, UNCF. We had scholarships for every type of student. And not only was this for our students, but we had financial aid workshops for parents. as well. So while the students were applying for scholarships, parents were getting all the information they needed for their financial aid journey that their young people will take. It was very, very well attended. There was not a parking space at East High School. Someone had to park illegally, but it wasn't me. But it was very well attended, and the feedback, we took surveys, the feedback from parents, they really appreciated our scholarship workshop. And that was in partnership with I Know I Can.
Awesome. Two amazing organizations. And lastly, as we get ready to move into the holidays and hopefully very quickly, and we spend time with families and friends and people that we love and people that are easy to love and people that are hard to love. I want us to take time to think about how we treat each other. This past week, and the reason I'm wearing purple, purple is domestic violence awareness color. And we lost two very bright young women. One of them was a teacher who was a victim of domestic violence. And we know that teen dating violence, especially among our students, is also an issue. So for Alicia Frazier Mason, who was a teacher in the Cleveland area, also a member of Delta Sigma Theta sorority, and Dr. Tamara O'Neill, who was a 38-year-old doctor in Chicago, who was at work having a conversation and who suddenly lost their life. Normally we would have a moment of silence to commemorate such a tragedy, and I think both of them would do that. But I'd offer that we need to have a moment to call somebody to say, I'm your safe person. I want us to use our voice and encourage people not to be silent around domestic violence. Encourage our kids not to keep those type of secrets. And that if someone is hurting you, if you're not in a safe place or if you need help, say something. Tell your teacher, tell your principal, tell your bus driver, tell your best friend, tell anybody. I hope people can get help, and I hope that not only gun violence is a tragedy, but the things that happen to people, and very disproportionately to women, but also to men, that this is a very stinging time. And it was very saddened to see two young women, very young, to become victims of that. So even though it's not Domestic Violence Month, it happens with or without a ribbon or a holiday. And so let us just be mindful to be an opening and listening to ear if someone has something to say to us, and may those words find resources so those people can find help. Thank you, President Baker.
Thank you very much, Board Member Gibbs. I appreciate that. Board Member Reyes.
Thank you, President Baker. I just wanted to also thank the organizers of the Youth My Brother's Keeper Conference on November 10th at Afrocentric. Unfortunately, we had a meeting that day, but I was able to catch the end of their guest speaker, and I'm going to mess up the gentleman's name, but he was a college student who was injured playing football. Icky. Yeah. Icky Woods. The students were just so engaged in his message, and he really connected very well with the students. But in addition to that, what I really enjoyed at the end of the conference, they had an opportunity for our kids to talk to organizations for future jobs. So they had the military there, they had our Columbus police officers, our fire, some of our nursing schools. So some of the non-traditional careers that maybe our male students may not necessarily look at, but giving them an opportunity to view a spectrum of what their possibilities were. So I just want to, I know there's members of the city that were there, and just, it was outstanding. Vice President Cole stopped by also, so I just want to thank them for bringing that to our youth and giving them, our male youth in particular, our urban youth, giving them an opportunity to do that.
Thank you, Mr. President. Very quickly, and the gentleman's name was Inky Johnson. But had the opportunity this past weekend to attend the Columbus Gifted Academy and their festival that they had that day. That had an awesome turnout. Had the opportunity to talk to a number of parents and educators who are very excited about what's to come for that school in years to come. Very happy about their experience there. So I had the opportunity to congregate with that and enjoy myself.
Any other announcements or points of pride, colleagues? We'll send those out. If there isn't, then I'll ask the Vice President to offer a motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's recommended that the board recess into executive session per section 121.22G1 to consider the appointment, employment, or compensation of an employee or public official.
Moved and seconded. Mr. Treasurer?
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Treasurer. The board will now recess into executive session. We will return to these chambers after that executive session, and we will take up item 11.5 at that time. Thank you. We are back from executive session, out of recess. We'll call us back together. So I am prepared to offer a motion. Whereas there is a vacancy on the Columbus City Schools Board of Education, and whereas Section 3313.11 of the Ohio Revised Code and Board Bylaw 0145 give the board the authority to appoint an individual to fill an unexpired term, and whereas the board has received notices of interest from individuals interested in serving the unexpired term, and whereas Board Bylaw 0145 states that the board may interview candidates to ascertain their qualifications, and whereas the Board of Education selected 3 individuals to interview at its meeting on November 7, 2018, and whereas the board has recently completed its interviews, now therefore be it resolved that the Columbus City Schools Board of Education hereby appoints James Ragland to fill the current vacancy on the Board of Education. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and seconded. Discussion? Mr. Treasurer?
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes.
That motion carried.
Thank you, colleagues. Our new colleague will be sworn in officially within the next few days. He will take his seat on December 4th, and looking forward to that. So is there anything else for the good of the order this evening, colleagues?
Second.
There is a motion, there is a second, and I don't think there's any discussion. Mr. Treasurer, would you like to call the roll?
Vice President Cole.
Yes.
Ms. Gibbs.
Yes.
Ms. Hudson.
Yes.
Ms. Reyes.
Yes.
President Baker.
Yes.
Mr. Brown.
Yes.
Motion carried.
We stand adjourned, colleagues. I thank you. Happy Thanksgiving.